there is a lot going on in the world, yeah? And I imagine it takes some level of megalomaniacy to believe that you could actually fix all of the world's problems, right? And this is a lot of the people that are your listeners live in this space, right, already, which is synchronicity, intuition. How do we know what to tune into? What problems are we here to solve, right?
Where people are struggling at the moment, struggling to find their purpose, perhaps struggling to find their values, what would be some starting places for them?
It is going to require a little bit of courage on your part. Let me inspire you as to why to go get your values, right? So something's happening to free speech over here,
Yes.
right? And it's causing disconnection. Is this information disintegrating me? Do I feel more lost? Do I feel wispier? Do I feel less whole? Do I feel more fearful? I'm more lost than when I started. I've background of an engineer, so I'm always, I don't want to say skeptical, but yeah, skeptical. Trust that things are happening for you, you know, the good things and some of the challenging things. It's all part of the soul's journey to learn to be informed.
So I'm delighted today to introduce a new guest to the Live, Love, Learn podcast, Amrit Sandhu. Amrit is an international speaker, podcast host, and founder of Inspired Evolution. He's a certified by the Eckhart Tolle School of Awakening, and he's also a Mind Valley Mastery certified trainer for Australia and India. Amrit delivers keynotes, talks, seminars, and workshops for the Inspired Evolution and Mind Valley in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia. He has a real gift for sharing impactful ideas, insights, with unrivaled enthusiasm, which enables him to engage with audiences from all over the world. I know you're going to absolutely love this podcast as much as I do. We really explore finding our purpose, finding our core values, and how when we know those, decisions become easier, using your intuition becomes easier. So much covered in this that will give practical spiritual support to each and every one of us. So sit back, enjoy, and let us know what you think about it. And as always, if you love this podcast or you get some value, we would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button, share it with friends and family who might benefit, because this really makes a difference to me getting the best, most inspiring guests on this show. So thank you so much for that support. I am absolutely delighted to have on the Live, Love, Learn podcast a new guest for my listeners, but not a new guest for myself. So Amrit from the Inspired Evolution podcast, inspiring people to learn, think, and act with positive purpose. A big welcome. How are you doing today?
Oh my goodness, I am so much better for being here. It is such a treat to be here on your incredible podcast, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me. It's a treat for me.
I think our listeners are in for a real treat, Amrit, because your work in terms of really helping people zone in and find their purpose. I love what you say about how you have been through that journey of reverse engineering your own dream life. And I think your links will be below, and you interview some amazing guests on your podcast. And Amrit, where I wanted to start today is we are going through this great awakening. So many people are asking different questions and seeing the world around them through a new lens. So how can finding your, first of all, what do you mean by purpose? What's your definition of finding your purpose? And how important is this for people when they are really rediscovering the world that they're living in?
Yeah, it's a very beautiful question to open with, and a very big question to open with. Thank you so much for that. Let's because many people, when we do think about purpose, we end up thinking about a particular like work function that we do in the world. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go out in the world and, you know, be a lawyer or be a doctor and heal people, or, you know, be an engineer and build stuff, and that's going to be the purpose to my life. And there's a whole myriad of ways we can walk ourselves into this conversation to sort of just pick the thread on it. But a place to start, one of the things I'm certified by is the Gene Keys. And in the Gene Keys, you go away, you get your hologenetic profile. For those that don't know, highly recommend you go check it out. It's based on astrology. It's based on the I Ching. I don't want to digress too much, but it's pretty trippy. I will say that because most people will put in their date of birth and they'll get a bit of a reading on themselves. And I've background of an engineer, so I'm always, I don't want to say skeptical, but yeah, skeptical of, of such things on my best day. Let's just put it that way. And everyone that I've ran through the Gene Keys, when they're reading their profile, they're like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And you just watch them lean in. And it's like, what? How does it not? Anyway, so it's anyway. So in the Gene Keys, you get your hologenetic profile, and your profile is a bit of a constellation. Let's put it that way of who you are. And one of the beautiful things that it does is it puts at one end of the chart of your constellation your life's work, which is what you're here to do in the world and your service to others, right? And that's your life's work. But then also at the opposite end of the chart is your inner purpose, your reason for being here. And I find that so helpful in the realm of this conversation because so many of us believe that the work we do in the world is the purpose that we embody, right? But it's just one, it's a major dimension of the work that we embody, but it is just one dimension, right? Like I have a purpose as a father. I have a purpose as a husband. I have a purpose for my soul being here, doing what it's put here on the planet at this particular time. That is my soul's journey, learning the lessons that it wants to learn in the time that it's here. The avatar that is Amrit, that is here, coaching, speaking, public speaking, podcasting, that you see, is also here in service, finding its purpose in the world, trying to fulfill its greatest capacity and fulfillment and potential in its offering to the world as well. And so in that space, what do I mean by purpose? Purpose is you living into what your soul's expression was for you to be here, to live out, to maximize, to fully capacitate that expression, right? And I know I'm an engineer by qualification, so pardon those sort of terms, but that's that's how I view the world, right? And one of the places I love to start is to sort of get out of the left logic brain to go into the right brain, is to embrace this philosophy that we are the universe looking in on ourselves. And if we can really get on board with that, and I've followed your show, I know this is not foreign ground for your listeners. This is this is our bread and butter, right? So if we are the universe looking in on ourselves, there's not much that we can deduce about the universe. Well, there's a lot that can be said, but nothing conclusive. One of the things I believe, again, remember the skeptic, that can conclusively sort of say something about that phenomenon is that I'm the universe as an experience of consciousness, folded in on itself, looking in on itself, dividing itself. I'm Amrit, there's Catherine, there's listener. What? Why the division? Mm. It must be curious about itself in some way. So curiosity becomes this thread, which I humbly believe is quite sacred. And so curiosity, your sacred curiosity, is something that we can have more of a conversation about in this conversation here today. But fundamentally, your soul, the universe at large, is curious about itself. It could look in from, and it literally is, just through the human species alone, 8 billion different lenses. And to think that you're superfluous to the grand design of it all is, you know, that conversation gets thrown out the window, in my humble opinion. But here, like now we can sort of see that, okay, I'm here. I'm looking in on myself as the universe at large. Why am I here? What is it that is the best use of this particular lens of the universe looking in on itself? That's where I come home to the conversation around purpose. What were you put here to do? What were you made to do? And what is it that is the best use of the divine gifts, the genetical makeup that you are, all of that put to best use to make the most of this life that you have? Touch wood.
Absolutely beautiful. And there's so much depth to that, Amrit, in terms of one of the things I've been involved in a lot of discussions over the last few years about finding your purpose, even the purpose about, you know, why are we drawn to find out certain information and what are we meant to do about it? And one of the things that comes up a lot is this link between being in the head space and the heart space, which I know you're an expert at, and how when a lot of people are searching for their purpose, it can become an effort and a very head-driven exercise as opposed to a heart-driven. Talk us through that process, because I know that's something you're an expert in.
Yeah, so another thing that I'm certified in is heart math. And they do say outside of that space, actually in a bit more of like the plant medicine type sort of communities, they say the journey from the head to the heart is the longest journey you'll ever take. And, it in so many ways it's true because the thing that you're conquering along that journey, I believe, for the most part, is fear.
Yeah.
And our fears are ever present. It's like you conquer one and then another. It's almost like it can be a bit of a hydra sometimes. It's like you slay one head and oh, there's seven more. Maybe I'm done for the day. I'll go rest. But nonetheless, there's that journey. And one of the things worth articulating, I think, just quickly to introduce into the conversation, and I have some reservations about the way that this is articulated by most people at large. So pardon me for what I'm about to say, and I'll explain why. But there are four levels of consciousness. Let's just start there really quickly, right? And the four levels, I'll give you a quick, because that can be a whole podcast unto itself. Level one is victim mentality, right? It's where life is happening to you, right? There's no growth mindset in that space. You're subjugated to all the forces of life. You don't really have much control. There's not much that you can do about it, but life is happening to you. You're a victim of life, right? Touch wood. And I think we all know some sort of people that live there. I've been there. Yeah, I've tried to put my hand up. And that's one of the challenges I have with the word level is because I'd like to use the word spectrum rather than level, because level means like you graduate and some people are below you, some people are above you. We're all one, really. We're all going through this journey. It's sort of like, my thumb is better at grabbing things than my pinky is. Like, does that mean my pinky's useless? Absolutely not, right? Like, it's all part of the process of us getting to where we're going as this, unified whole. But nonetheless, there's level one consciousness, just so we can articulate it through this journey, which is you're the victim and life is happening to you. You expand out from there into level two consciousness, and we can talk about the things that graduate you from level one to level two. But level two consciousness is life is happening by you. Yeah. So in this space, you set goals, you go achieve things, and I call this guy affectionately the achiever, right? And we all know these achievers. I've been the achiever. A lot of the people that I coach are like, yeah, generally they've been achieving for the longest while, but there's a lack of meaning in there. They're like, you know what? I've got it all. I finally got it all, and yet none of it meant what I thought it was going to mean. Like, what? And they go into this existential mode, which is like, where to from here? And spirituality starts to call them, and then we go into the next space. So that's level two. Level three, life is happening for you, right? And this is a lot of the people that are your listeners live in this space, right? Already, which is synchronicity, intuition. Things are already starting to flow. Like, oh, such and such crossed my path today. That was really interesting. I wonder why that particular thing happened to me. Or, oh, like I was on my way to work, but I was, intuitively had to go the long way around. What happened there? Maybe something was on my path that wasn't meant to be part of my path. Not from a place of fear, but just guided a certain way, right? So that's level three consciousness. Life is happening for you. And just to round out the model, you've got level four consciousness where life is happening as you. This is some of the people I've podcasted. It's like they're living in non-duality, unity consciousness. Like they see you as me, as me, as you. It's like we're all it. It's like, whoa, it's all happening as one. Very trippy to speak to some of these people and like, yeah, but nonetheless. So when we talk about the head to the heart, I believe actually, and this is why they call it expanding consciousness. I think this is why the conversation is so present in a conversation like the one on your podcast, is I think collectively, you mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, I think we are collectively going through a shift. You look at where we were pre-industrial revolution, so much of society's evolution was from this mental space, right? Engineers were, just absolutely killing it. Now IT has like absolutely been killing it. Like it's been a very mental universe. And the occult teachings still stand, like from however long ago, like the universe is mental. We totally believe that. But there is also this shift that's happening. We're all waking up. Like it's almost like we've stood on the shoulders of all the mentalism to kind of go, okay. And now it's like I sort of joke sometimes. It's like the best mindset coach is a spiritual teacher, right? It's like, you get to the point where like mind sort of taps out at its peripheries and it's like, okay. And then rest back into soul, right? And that's where level three comes in. And that's that journey into the heart, because level three is, I call him the flower, but you can also call him the surrenderer. And what you're surrendering to is the heart. And the key thing that can help you actually discern and navigate that space, I believe, in level 3 consciousness, is the journey of the heart. I imagine in level 4, the whole thing works as one great cacophony, symphony. It's beautiful. But level 3, I think, is the journey to go from level 2 is all about the head. Because when you're a victim, you're kind of just locked in, like, it's more body based. Level 2, you're starting to get mental. It's like, hey, I want to set some goals. I can dig myself out of this with some thought ideas, some process. I like, and you can really start to law of attraction. You're starting to think about certain things, and it works. The big challenge for most people that are in level 2 consciousness is that old adage, which is what got you here is not what will get you there, right? And therein lies the head to the heart, which you were just describing, it being such a difficult journey, because it was your head that got you out of level 1. Right? All that mentalism is like, oh yeah, I can think my way through. Like, oh my God, it's just a matter of perspective. How fantastic. Let me set some goals. And you get out of it. And you like start embodying level 2 and you achieve a bunch of stuff. And you're like, oh my God, look at all, like I've achieved stuff. I'm getting places. But then you get to this juncture where it's like, I got all this stuff, but it didn't get me what I thought I wanted. Right? I thought if nice house, then happiness. I thought if nice car, then respect. Right? But it didn't really scratch that itch. Like, I don't feel any happy. I don't feel any more respected. Like, I'm still me, what happened there? And then you start to like, the mind starts to close in on itself. It's like, hey, I'm sort of tapping out on like, how many more things can we go get? Like, do you need to become the president? And is that a sustainable journey? Like, how much further do we push this envelope? And then like, it starts to atrophy on itself and you go, oh, okay, what's the next journey? And that's the journey to the heart, right? And like we said, now it's like you want to try, and I've recognized this in my own self, the part of me that wants to push into level 3 consciousness wants to do so with ambition, but ambition lives in the realm of the mind. It's like, dang it, like I'm still doing that level 2 thing, right? And so that relies in where like level 3 is this journey of, I believe, of the heart and us opening up, us learning to surrender, us learning to expand, learning to soften, trust that things are happening for you, the good things and some of the challenging things. It's all part of the soul's journey to learn to be informed. But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, pardon the pun. But it is a whole journey. And I think we're all going to go on it to some degree, now, if not later, and later may not be this lifetime, maybe the next one, touch wood, yet to be discerned, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I think so many people are in a hurry to move through the phases without really work through them. One of the things we find a lot is people stuck in that why loop. And when people are finding themselves stuck in that why loop, whether it's on a personal level or more to do with world events, what are some of your tips of getting out of that, of recognizing that and shifting yourself out of that?
Yeah, so when you're saying the why loop, I'm imagining it to be the why me loop. Is that what you're referring to? Like, why me?
Or why all these world events happening? So many people will they want to make changes in their own individual life, but also they can, on their passage of discovery, can be finding out lots of things that are happening on the world scale that don't seem to make sense. Why the duality of suffering? Why do some children suffer? Why are there wars? Why are animals treated so horrendously? And making sense of all of that and not losing sight of we're here to have the most amazing lives on an individual level and not necessarily take on the whole world's problems on our own shoulders.
Yeah, okay. So that's a great question, by the way. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So the humble answer that I have is there is a lot going on in the world. Yeah. And I imagine it takes some level of megalomaniacy to believe that you could actually fix all of the world's problems. Let's just sort of introduce that into the zeitgeist here. Now, one of the things, and I'm just looking because there was a lot in that question, so I've just made notes as how best to respond to that. One of the things I find, or have found in the past, let's start here, is when you start exposing yourself to more and more information, I'm not saying people should remain ignorant. That is very far from what I'm saying. But one of the things you will find is the pursuit of knowledge, especially in the world of information and misinformation that we live in right now, can be quite a rabbit hole. Yeah, it can be quite a serious rabbit hole to go down. That doesn't mean that there are not things happening in the world. Yeah, absolutely there are. But when you turn on the news, I remember COVID, like COVID was happening. Yeah. But the intensity with which it was happening, like on the news, was one thing. But then when you went out to the park and you saw people, like, yes, there was consequences. Absolutely. Things were happening to people. People were losing their lives. I'm not saying they weren't. Yeah. But also, like, even just mainstream, like, there's, if there's nothing else happening in the world and there's only one place that's had an earthquake, everybody will be hearing about it. But if there's like an earthquake happening and there's politics here and there's that there, and then people won't even hear about the earthquake. And it's like, what happened? Earthquakes aren't important all of a sudden. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, absolutely they are. Yeah. Like things are happening, things are being impacted all over the world. But the information flow is not proportionate to the dangers and the risks that we're presented with. Right. Now, that's not, again, I'm not trying to invite in ignorance, but we will talk about how to actually really distill what is useful for you to know and what's not useful for you to know. So just bear with me a sec as we go through the conversation, because I've been on this journey of trying to become more informed. As you can imagine, a podcaster in the spiritual space as well. It's only a matter of time, because, and one of my favorite podcast titles is conspirituality or something. It's like conspiracy and spirituality and how they all just start to like mesh into this one real, and it can be such, especially with the amount of information that flows your way, because there's spiritual and then there's the distraction as well. And we had someone really profound on the podcast recently, Robert J. Gilbert, and he was talking about the nature of like misleading light. And there are light beings that actually mislead you and pretend to be of the light. And their light is even brighter than the light of like divine light in some ways, because it's like shiny light and it's like, look at me light. And it's like trying to distract you and it's trying to pull you off your path. And even he goes, don't demonize that stuff though, as much as they may be called demons. They actually are in service to you developing your spiritual quotient, your spiritual muscle. Like they're doing that so you can like become wiser, man. Like that's such a gift that they're doing for you, right? And that sort of speaks back to the why me conversation, which is like, it's all happening for you, right? Like if you can find the gratitude for that, if you can find gratitude, it's like the quickest accelerant, in my humble opinion, through the journey. But integrating that can be quite, I'm conscious, quite a bit to stomach. But that space to sort of say, it can be a wealth of information that's coming at you. And one of the things that I had to learn, because, and for me, at the risk of introducing a conspiracy into this container at the moment, it started with money. It was like, okay, I'm going to work. And because, through my purpose journey, like it really started to like, I pulled it at the thread because I was like, money, like I'm spending the best years of my life, trading the best hours of the day, sitting at this desk in a cubicle. Why? Yeah. And this is that why. And you start to pull at the thread and it's like, well, you need money. It's like, why do I need money? Where did money come from? And it's like, oh, barter and exchange used to exist. Okay, barter and exchange used to exist. Oh, it all used to be backed by gold. And eventually something happened where they unpinned it from gold and they just started generating numbers in computers and people started living their lives based on this. And it's like, okay. But some people take their lives over the numbers that are generated in computers. That's a bit sinister.
Yeah.
And you start to think about that for a second and then you go, whoa, what? And then you start to end up down these loopholes. Now, this comes back to there's lots going on in the world. How do we know what to tune into? What problems are we here to solve, right? Just to sort of give you an example. And from following that rabbit hole to another rabbit hole, to another rabbit hole, to another rabbit hole, did we go to the moon or did we not go to the moon? Like, do we do this? Do we not do this? There's all these conspiracies, right? Is this president's partner like, a man or a female? Like, what the, like, where are we now in this conversation? And I'm more, and here's the catch, I'm more lost than when I started.
Yes. And we're seeing this so big time. And isn't that the greatest conspiracy of all?
Right. And that's the big realization I had, that because a lot of these conspiracies actually get their energy, if you believe in energy work, from you believing in them.
Absolutely.
And they're loving that their story is being played out. So the key thing, and this is where I've got a bit of an awareness around the word integration. Right before we started today's podcast, I had a quick tune in with you. It's like, what's the intention today? We landed in a really solid intention. And I hope you don't mind me sharing it. It was like, Empowerment is like, boom, like that's solid. Like I love that. And on the end of everything, like we start a coaching journey with myself. It's like always, what's the intention? And as you come out of it, it's like, what's the integration? How are we going to integrate all of this into our lives, right? Coaching may be finished for like 6 months, but what's for the next 6 months? And how do you integrate everything you've taken into that? So integration is a really powerful word. And I like to tune in and go, okay, am I tuning into the information that's coming into you? Is it integrating you? Like, are you feeling more integrated based on this information that you've just absorbed? Like, I'll do a podcast with someone and it's on my path and purpose. And now I feel enriched. It's like, oh, like I had this podcast the other day. The guy was talking about the structures of your heart's energetic field. And I'm like, I can actually kind of feel that. Like, I feel even more me, right? Now, that's what integration feels like, right? Like you're integrating the information and it's available for you to like Lego blocks clicking in, like click. I'm an engineer, right? It's part of me for that model, but nonetheless, right? So that's really important. Or is this information disintegrating me? Do I feel more lost? Do I feel wispier? Do I feel less whole? Do I feel more fearful? Right? And if you feel more fearful, that's you disintegrated, right? You've lost your empowerment. Yeah. So integration is a really important discerning factor for you to be able to determine what battles to roll your sleeves up for.
I hope you're loving this podcast with Amrit as much as I am. And whilst we're talking about integration, I want to take a quick break to tell you about the amazing products by the sponsor of this podcast, the Biophotonic holistic range of products, which help us all take healing to a higher frequency. So Biophotonic have 2 amazing bioresonance devices, the little BioNexus and the slightly bigger Biophotonic. And this lovely little device is now my go-to support, especially when doing my daily affirmations and manifestation practices. So some of the key benefits of both these machines are improved energy, decreased inflammation, supports immune health, physiological homeostasis, really supports rejuvenation and regeneration and integrity of cells, improves memory, cognitive, emotional, and psychological states, speeds up recovery, and just like we've been talking about today, really improves human consciousness support. Some of the key benefits of the Biophotonic little machine: cleansing parasites, giving active protection. You can wear this, take it with you wherever you go. Detoxifies heavy metals, clears EMF radiation out of cells, cleanses bacteria and viruses, detoxes chemicals and toxins, DNA repair, pain management, calming meditation complexes, strengthens the aura field, and frequency packs can be added to water. I think we all know the detrimental impacts of mobile and Bluetooth radiation have been extensively studied, and it's critical that we minimize our exposure to these technologies where possible and avoid utilizing devices that depend on these harmful frequencies for operation. So both the BioNexus and the Biophotonic are standalone devices that do not require a Bluetooth connection, a Wi-Fi connection. You don't need to buy any frequency packages. They don't need a mobile phone to control the device. They don't require the use of electrodes, and they're completely wireless, ready to use straight from the box and very simple to use. So don't forget, you can use both these lovely little devices with your pets and use coupon code CE20 for 20% off all products on the site. The link's below. Thank you.
Let's be real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like, so Amrit, and so it was inevitable that we are going to get here at some point, but the place to start, in my humble opinion, and this is just what's worked for me again and again and again, and you know, having coached like 350 plus people deeply on one-on-one year-long journeys now, and obviously all the public speaking and the podcast and whatnot, values.
Yeah.
Right? Getting clear on your values. Before, where we were like, we're the universe looking in on ourselves and we're the lens, you can almost picture the shape of the lens, the angles and whatever, and again, I know I'm being an engineer, but the shape of the lens is dictated by your values. So my 3 highest values, it's easy to, because I know them and it's easy to speak to them, a connection, contribution, and celebration. So these are the 3 things that light me up to the nth degree, right? Case in point, I've had a really big, long day today. Yeah, it's been amazing. Lots of great stuff has happened, but it's also winding down to the end of my day. But I'm like energized to be here with you. Why? Because am I getting to connect with Catherine on a really deep level here? And also you that it's tuning in? Absolutely, right? There's a connection being built. Contribution, hopefully people are, taking something away from this podcast. And celebration, hopefully your life is a little bit richer, a little bit brighter, a little bit fuller because of it. So all three of my values are being met and I'm highly energized, right? Touch wood, like I could have been fasting for days, right? And still have the energy to be here to do this because it's what I'm put here to do, right? One of my deepest fascinations of where this all really sort of started was I remember reading an article way back in high school about Beyonce. And of all people, pardon me, I know this is a spiritual podcast, but bear with me. I'll get there. Beyonce's here. She's filming a music video, and the reporter remarked that she didn't eat or drink for 3 days. She didn't eat or sleep for 3 days. She drank water. Yeah, and all of us kind of know how important sleep is when you look into wellness and food, like nutrition, right? And you're like, dude, Beyonce's filming music videos. Like her music videos are like high energy. Like if you've seen Beyonce dance, like she's put here to dance, but also that's a lot of dancing, right? So you kind of go, where does the energy come from? To not sleep and not eat and yet dance 3 days straight whilst filming high energy music videos and you're just basically hydrating your way through it, right? Now, some would argue that fasting has profound benefits and I didn't know any of that back then, right? But the interesting piece there is, where does the energy come from? When you're living in alignment to your values, there's no question Beyonce's an entertainer.
Yes.
Right? She's living in alignment to who she is. Soul, alignment, yeah? Avatar, personality, ego, whatever you want to call it, right? When there's that alignment, the energy pours in from the universe, right? You're capacitated, you're activated to do what you put here to do. So for me, touch wood, like I'm here to connect, contribute, celebrate. I know that. So I could be dog tired and rock up to a conversation like this or a coaching call like this or a public speaking engagement and zoom, like the energy just touch wood, you're in. You're put here, you're here to do what you're put here to do, right? So you get animated, you get excited, you're into it. Like I should probably stop laboring the point right now, case in point, right? But that's where that is such a profound piece to integrate into your awareness and go, okay, so from here, how do I understand what really integrates me? And it's like, well, if it stacks on top of your own values, those are the lens of your sacred curiosity. So my sacred curiosity, touch wood, connection, contribution, celebration. As long as I'm connecting, as long as I'm contributing, as long as I'm celebrating, I know that that's something I should champion, right? I know that that's something I should find out more about, right? So something's happening to free speech over here,
yes,
right? And it's causing disconnection. For someone that's connection and contribution oriented, that sort of matters to me. Yeah, because it's causing people to disconnect. Like such and such is saying such and such is saying such and such. That's a matter worth championing for me. The Inspired Evolution does invest a bunch of stuff into like trees, right? But that's, again, for me, that's connection into like spirit and the planet and, all sorts of stuff. But there's other causes which we could be investing in, right? Which would be amazing and I think are worthwhile. Like education in developing countries, I think is incredibly important to invest in. Yeah. And you could argue like the contribution of that, like education couldn't be higher. And I've thought about it. In the end, we landed on, hey, connecting back to nature is such a gift for all of our mental health and spaces that we opted to make our charity around trees, right? And so, but how do you know which cause to champion, what battles to fight? If you get clear on who you are, which is your personality is, right? Your soul is infinite, but your personality you can get really clear on by discovering your values. And most people have a top 3 values. Some people have a top 2, some people top 4, but generally it's 3. I've worked with, like I said, tons of people on this. I would say 85% of the time it's a top 3. Yeah. But also giving you grace and space. If you can't find that third one, maybe you're a tour. Yeah. Or maybe you've got 4 and you can't distill it down. Go with 4. You're good. Right. But knowing that is so important because now when I look at news and it's like, I rarely tune into the news.
Yeah.
Because I don't find it connects me to anything that I want to be connected to. Like all I find myself connecting to is fear. In fact, it also facilitates connection for me. And this sounds like I'm burying my head in the sand, but when I meet somebody new and they're like, oh, did you hear about what happened in the news the other day? Like, such and such is a presidential campaign. And I'm like, no, I've got no idea, but I'm a good listener. I'd love to learn about it. All of a sudden this person's like, oh, I've been watching the entire saga. I can't wait to tell you about it. And now we've just had a 30-minute conversation, and I've ended up really connected to this person. And that's the kind of connection I was looking for, right? So that level of like, okay, I'm aware of who I am, and that facilitates the types of interactions, the types of things, the types of playing outs, if you will, of what I was put here to do and witness and experience. Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. And that's where you can, again, the conversation around the silver bullet being, does this integrate me, or am I feeling more disintegrated? If you don't know, like if you don't have a felt sense of that in your body energetically, great, that's fine. If you want to get mental about it, not mental like crazy about it, but maybe a little bit, bring yourself to your values, right? And then you'll understand it's like, okay, this is connecting me. This is dedicated to connection. This is dedicated to contribution. This is dedicated to celebration. I can do that. Like, this is for me, and I feel more whole when I'm experiencing this.
It's so beautiful, and I'm laughing because one of my cats, Coco here, I'm an absolute mad about animals, and 2 out of your 3 core values are exactly the same as mine. And
yeah, of course they are.
about my connection, mine are authenticity, connection, and contribution. But my connection is very associated with animals and nature. It's such a cool part of myself. And when you were talking about that, Amrit, my cat,
she popped up. She popped up just to affirm the point.
In terms of the energy, is just
stole your thunder
on that so much. It's absolutely wonderful. And
can I just jump in there for one sec? I will let you ask your question, but just one sec. And it's no coincidence that we're doing this podcast together, right? Because you have the same values, bar one, right? And the other one matters to me. Like, authenticity matters to me. It's just not in my top 3, right? And I'm sure celebration matters to you. It's just not in your top 3, right? And so we have such a good energetic match, value match, right? So naturally we're like, oh, I love what you're sharing. It's like, I totally get it. Of course I get it. It's like, well, our lenses are very similar, right? And we're here to do similar work. And so we connect really easily because it's like, oh yeah, let's just say it's green, yellow, and purple. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize yellow and I recognize green. Yeah, but you've got purple. That's kind of nice. I got blue. Check it out. And it's like, yeah, that's great. Like I love that there's all these colors, but we can recognize each other more readily. And that's how energy flow happens. It's like you meet someone and having an alignment to values really helps, right? And you can start to understand how this helps with decision making. Like when I had to, a quick example, I'm sorry, I know you're meant to ask a question, but Mind Valley approached me at one point. For those that know Mind Valley, was like, hey, are you like, we're thinking of throwing up a coaching program. COVID's hit us, and we're looking for some coaches. And we're going through an audition process. Would you be keen to throw your hat in the ring? And I didn't ask about contracts. I didn't ask about money. I didn't ask about like all the sensible things the entrepreneur in me should have asked about. Yeah. All I did was went, will I get to connect? Yeah. Will I get to contribute? Oh, yeah. Will I get to celebrate? Yeah, me and others. I'm in. And they're like, you can get back to us tomorrow. And I'm like, no, I'm in. And they were like, what? And it literally took me 30 seconds to make a life decision. Yeah, that this is what I was going to do for the next little part of my life going forward. Become a Mind Valley coach, right? Like, done. Yeah, premium Mind Valley programs were built upon this entire thing that myself, Wasilla, built on. So it was an incredible experience to go through. That to sort of say, that was decision making.
Yes.
I've looked at moments where I've cast an eye over to my life partner, just to leave you a bit of insight into her life. Her highest value is integrity. And there are moments where connection and integrity, they're both right, but the situation is like, you can't honor both in the same moment.
Yes.
So who wins? What wins? And now I could sit here and be like, you're wrong. She could be like, you're wrong. And it's like, actually, we're both right. You just happen to be more right. Right? And the argument just dissolves. Yeah, like in that moment. And like, I know I know that, if she's not connecting, it's not that she doesn't love me. It's because I'm like here, that I'm connection obsessed because I'm Mr. Connection, right? And she's maintaining a pillar of integrity over there, right? And that's her playing into her truth. And I can look over and go, oh my God, integrity is so valuable, so important. So you start to learn and love each other that way. You can make decisions this way. Your relationships are not, so much comes from understanding who you are, know thyself, right? And understanding yourself starts with understanding your values. I'll stop digressing, please.
Oh no, it's not a digress, and it's just so beautiful. It's exactly why I wanted to go with it, because I think so many people are worried at the moment, and I get this a lot from my community, is worried about who do I trust, who do I believe? And you've brought it back so beautifully that when you really are secure in your own values, we're in a world now where there's so much aggression in communication. I mean, I'm old enough to remember that it doesn't have to be like that. I grew up where it was absolutely fine to have different opinions to your friends, and you didn't fall out about it. And now I suppose in a world of social media and communicating so much online, there can be some beauties of it, because that's how we're connecting today. But also this mismatch, I think, Amrit. I'd love to know how people can navigate using their understanding of their core values to move away from this sort of aggressive communication where people's perhaps belief systems or opinions digress a lot from each other.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, especially the echo chambers and the isolation that affords there. But obviously, I missed a connection, so I'm going to see all those things, right? Back to your question, one of the things that naturally happens when you get clear on who you are is it's I don't want to say it this way, but it's the easiest way to say it, is you develop a bit of a superpower. The deeper you start to understand yourself, the easier it gets to understand others, right? And not from a place of judgment. It's just from a place of awareness, right? And that's kind of why you see coaches popping up, right? There is an expansion of consciousness going on. Like, people are becoming more and more aware of themselves, and they're able to support other people through their shifts in their awareness, right? And so sometimes, you'll be in a situation, you can identify that, oh, such and such is going through such and such at the moment, right? So I'll give you an example. And this is the example I use all the time, so pardon me if you've heard this before, but back to my wife and I, right? We've got different values. Yeah. So I'm connection, she's integrity. Let's just go with the top value. We were checking out of a building at some point. We used to live in an apartment tower back in my university days, and we had to book an elevator, right? And we went into this guy's office to book the elevator. The guy was toxic. Like, the guy was just one of those people that just, I don't know what happened in his day, but he was always like this, right? Like, he was just one of those people that was gruff, not enjoyable to be around. Let's just put it that way. We got in there, we booked the elevator. He said some nasty things. We got in, we got out. Job done. Now, as we left, my wife turned around to me at the time and she goes, and it was a blessing because I was just working on this body of work for the first time for me back then, right? And she turned around to me, she goes, hey, why didn't you say something to him? And I remember going, why didn't I say something to him? Why didn't I say something to him? And the natural inclination was like, shit, I'm not man enough for her, right? Now, you were saying before, battles between each other, people have these conflicts, but there was an opportunity for a battle to open up there. I was like, there was a battle with him. He was like, why am I not potentially man enough to, and that was a thought, but quickly thereafter was like, actually, I realized I was never going to say anything. And I had this immediate, I was never going to say anything. And I was like, why? And it was like, what was my behavior? It was like, I went in, got what I needed to do, and got straight out, right? Because it was like, I wanted to minimal connection time with this particular individual, and this particular whatever happening was happening, right? So there was that awareness for me that I'm connection, and I just wanted little as possible connection in this scenario. Me confronting in this particular situation would have spent more connection, which is the last thing I wanted to do in this situation, right? And so then I looked over at her and I was like, I didn't even know her highest value was integrity up until that point. That was the moment I realized, right? I was like, of course you want me to say something. Your highest value is integrity. And in your integrity, someone needs to tell that person that it's not okay to behave that way. Yeah. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, I just learned something about you. I was like, because I just learned something about, and this is how it works, right? The more you start to understand yourself, the more you start to understand others. And a couple of my teachers have been ex-Osho sannyasis. I don't know if that means anything to some people here, but Osho was an incredible teacher. And one of the exercises that he ran people through from both of these people that have gone through separate process, separate people, separate places, but both went through Osho's process. One of them is you'd get locked in a room and you'd cathartically, energetically, like pillows and raging and no food and all this sort of stuff. It was pretty full on, and you're locked in a room, padded walls. You would not be allowed out until you killed your mother and your father, like in your mind, which is, I know, insane, right? It's really full on. Both of them, when I asked, like, found out more about these processes, it was a great podcast, but, you know, afterwards, I was like, both of them said something very similar, which was a bit eerie, that both said something similar to the effect of when they both came out, they're like, nothing really changed except when I saw Catherine, when I saw Amrit, when I saw Tim, when I saw Dave, I didn't see like a bad person or a good person. I just saw, oh, there's that human being doing the best they can with what they know. There is that human being doing the best they can with what they know. And there is that human being doing the best they can with what they know. And that to sort of say, as you develop your own sense of awareness, one of the early traps along ego, like is ego, spiritual ego, right? It's like one of the first, like there's like picture 7 trapdoors. The very first trapdoor is like, oh, I've got more awareness. I'm superior. Let me judge you for like not being as aware, you know? And that's, I've been there. Yeah. And it just does not serve you. Yeah. It's just a trap. Keep going. That's one of those bright lights. That's like too bright. Yeah. Keep going back to the pure light. Yeah. Just relax. So that to sort of say, there's this opportunity for you to really find yourself, right? Like really understand who you are. And as you do that, you start to understand more about who other people are. And as you start to do that, conflict starts to resolve. There's more beauty in it. There's more peace in it, because it's like, oh, how cool that you're carrying that program and I'm carrying this program. I'm doing the best I can with who I'm made up to be, like my avatar, my personality, my values make up. My soul was here to learn these lessons. You're doing the best you can. Your soul was here to learn these lessons, right? And you start to see the beauty in it. You start to understand each other more. You start to hold space for it. Does it become difficult to reconcile to the nth degree? Absolutely. Like I look at some people doing some of the stuff in the world and I'm like, oh man, like that really should not be happening. But as soon as I say that, some part of me recognizes like the word should is really like troublesome.
Yes.
Now, I don't have languaging around it, and maybe the masters are right. We are all one, and you know, it begs a lot of questions as to why things are happening a certain way. But in the day to day, all the trivial sort of stuff, most of it we can drop. If we were just to look at it and go, hey, like that person's doing the best they can with what they know. And at the moment, that's hung me out to dry a little bit, but I get where they're coming from. You know, like that's where they're at right now. And I think just to sort of put a cherry on that cake a little bit, one of the things I have found recently for me, and this has been huge, and I think this is really distilled in becoming a father actually, is this saying that knowledge is knowing what to say, but wisdom is knowing when to say it. And as a podcaster, obviously that's a very, you know, oh, I love that. Let me collect that one in my toolkit. But then also recognizing that, you know, sometimes we might be, air quotes, right. Yeah. But is it always the right time to be right? You know, and that's not to say that, you know, it's okay to let things slide or, you know, but also sometimes someone's just figuring something out. And you being so right that this is the way they need to do it robs them of the opportunity to learn how to get it right. Yeah. And so there's wisdom in knowing when to share the truth, right? And be like, oh, actually, I see you have repetitively been exhibiting such behavior that you're not actually getting this to the outcome that you yourself are seeking. May I offer a hand? Sure. Okay, cool. This is how I would approach it. And this is how I did it the last 10, 15 times. And it actually worked out reasonably okay. Does that illuminate anything? Oh, doesn't it just? Cool. Okay, awesome. I'm glad that's landed. Glad I could be of service, right? Touch wood. So yeah, just knowledge to know what to say, but wisdom to know when to say it.
That's so beautiful, because it's also the intent, isn't it, behind every action and every word. And I think that ties in so beautifully to the values that you've really clarified so much for me, and I hopefully for all the listeners, because when someone's intent is coming from a place, a heart space, from a place of really wanting to help, of really wanting to connect, whatever their values are, people can really feel it. So I suppose we're getting close to closing up. Words of wisdom, Amrit, in terms of where people are struggling at the moment, struggling to find their purpose, perhaps struggling to find their values. What would be some starting places for them to really take a look at even, why they are here and what makes them happy?
Cool. Okay. So, bit of a shameless plug. To get your values, inspiredevolution.com. That's the name of my podcast, inspiredevolution.com/values. If that's too long, which I admit it is a very long word, 2 words, amrit.coach/values, amrit.coach/values. There's a 20-minute masterclass, which will get you clear on your values. Also, we're just updating it now as we go as well. And by the time you guys get this, it'll probably be updated. We're also working on you being able to discover your anti-values, because there are things that there's a light that you're running towards, but there's also the darkness that you're running from. Yeah, just to sort of round out the conversation, make sure it's properly there. So yeah, that component to it. Usually I kept it in my coaching, but I think it's valuable just to sort of add it in there now. Why not? Just do a little bit of extra recording. No harm, no foul. So that would be the place I would point you to go, because 20 minutes from now, you'll be super clear. Like, you'll be as clear as I am. Connection, contribution, celebration, 20 minutes of your time. And it still sort of short circuits my mind a little bit to think so many people tuning in won't go do that. And it's like, oh my God, 20 minutes. Like, you're listening to this podcast for an hour, 20 more minutes, please. Just 20 more minutes. Anyway, my invitation stands for you to go, please just check that out and yeah, get your values. It's so helpful. So one of the questions around what you're asking is like passion, purpose. How does it all like, if we're going there, let me inspire you as to why to go get your values. It is going to require a little bit of courage on your part, right? So when people go through a coaching journey with me, there's 3 pillars to my coaching. The first part is all about align. Yeah. So in alignment, right, the first thing we do is discover your values. The next thing is we look back on your story. Like, who are you? The personality that you're playing. Your biggest challenges are your biggest gifts is like one of the biggest messages I've learned on my podcast. Then we dive deep into building a 12-dimensional vision for your life, like across 12 different dimensions of your life. That's everything that lives in the align piece. And I call these the ABCs of purpose. Then we work on B, which is all about believing, right? And this is all your mindset stuff, right? Because you might get clear on all the stuff that you're put here to do, and then still feel resistance. And it's like, oh, because I don't like imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. Oh, and it's like, okay, cool. That's the belief stuff, right? And we can unpack that, right? And that's where your mindset starts to kick in, right? You can actually achieve, just like you have been doing for a whole bunch of other stuff in this spiritual space as well. Let's go, right? And then the last piece in the pillar, and I'm zipping through this, is C, right? And C is create. So the ABCs of purpose, create is we've got to go take some action, right? It may be in your career, it may be in your personal life, it may be in your relationships, it may be in your workplace, but you've got to go, like, you've got to be of service. Now, why the create piece is what I'm hearing in your question, right? And so let's break that model down really quickly as to how we introduce that in coaching. So what's going on is we talked about our sacred curiosity before, yeah? And for those that are tuning in on video, this will be a little bit easier for you to understand. Hopefully for audio, I'll do my best to bring you along on the journey. We talked about our sacred curiosity points. Now, really quickly, if you're not sure about a curiosity point, whether it's aligned to your sacred curiosity or it's what I call hijacked curiosity. What do I mean by hijacked curiosity? Society told you to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, or, your mum wanted you to do this, or, school told you that you had to get really good grades and sit down and pay attention and whatever, right? Those are socially influenced. So that's hijacked curiosity. You became curious about that because the world gave you love for exhibiting said behavior, right? Very early on. So you're doing that in response to that love, but it's not the love for who you truly are and your soul's love for your journey, right? So that's what I call hijacked curiosity, yeah? Then you've got your sacred curiosity, yeah? How to identify whether it's sacred? Well, we've been discussing that the entire podcast. Check in with your values, right? So I'm curious about podcasting. Does it afford connection, contribution, celebration? Yeah. Ooh, I'm onto something here, right? I was building high-rise towers. Do I get to connect, contribute? I don't really get to do any of that. Why am I doing this? I was hijacked. My curiosity was hijacked, right? Society told me I'd be someone of note if I'd went and did a bunch of that sort of stuff. Not really, right? So that to sort of say, get really clear on your sacred curiosity by checking in with your values about the things that you're curious about. And they're all there, they're ever present, right? You look around, my space has books on spirituality, books on finance, books on emotional well-being, instruments. There's, if you go upstairs, there's a bunch of supplements like Taoist herbal medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. Like, I'm into wellness, I'm into spirituality, I'm into music. I like this stuff, right? You can't turn it off. And if your space is minimalist and barren, check out your social media. Check out who are you following on Instagram? Who are your inspirations, inspired evolution? What are you following? What was the last thing you're searching? Like, your space, you can't turn off your soul. Your soul's always on. In fact, your body might turn off, touch wood, but your soul will go on. Yeah. And so that sacred curiosity is ever pouring out of you. Yeah. So in that space, take a look at what some of your curiosity points are. Now, oftentimes what happens when people come to coaching is they'll find they've got one curiosity point. I love coffee. Yeah. And they're like, I want to make it my life's purpose to bring coffee to the world. And it's like, that's a great idea, but can we just pump the brakes before you go and end up basically building something that's a job that doesn't serve you, because you've built an empire around coffee, but you just feel like you're a cog in the machine and it's not actually the thing that brings you the most amount of passion. It's just something that was a great idea that you loved for a moment in time. Right. And how do we mitigate something like that? That's one of the challenges you can see. So draw a ring around 3 or 4 curiosity points. So Catherine's podcast, right? There's being a good person. There's loving thy neighbor, right? It's how to treat animals better. It's how we can spend more time in nature. There's a shift happening in the planet. How do we honor the shift that's happening? She's got all these curiosity points. They're all actually quite disparate. But they coalesce in Catherine's being quite well, right? And they're sacred to her values. They all are about authenticity, connection, and contribution, right? So she can they meld together. Now, if she can draw a ring around 3 or more curiosity points, that's all it takes. I know I'm an engineer, so there's numbers, bear with me, but it's helpful, right? There's a formula. So if there's 3 or more curiosity points, ideally 5 or more, she now has the foundation stone for a piece of passion. Right? Now, all she has to do to activate those sacred curiosity points and turn them into what we then draw as the cup of the cup of passion. You can call it the Holy Grail, whatever. There's a cup there, right? And this is when they say fill up your own cup. This is what they're talking about. Fill up your own cup. Fill up your passions, right? How do you do that? Get clear on your sacred curiosity. Now you have to cultivate those curiosities. Right? So cultivate your sense of wellness, cultivate your spiritual interests, cultivate your interest in the world, cultivate podcasting, right? And so you find a vehicle that can help you cultivate. Now you're cultivating drop by drop. Every time you spend some time doing one of those curiosity points, you're filling up your cup of passion, right? And it's fueled by the intersection of your curiosities and the zinging and all the energy that creates. And it's all the sparks that fly off as sparks of little droplets of water that fill up your cup of passion. And the key thing was to cultivate. That was the thing you had to do, was carve out time. Sometimes it's as lame as, I'm going to spend 30 minutes going for walks in nature. I'm going to spend 30 minutes to walk with my dog. I'm going to spend 30 minutes to listen to that particular podcast about haberdashery, whatever. Yeah. But that's what it takes. Carve out some time, cultivate that. And what you're cultivating and filling up is that cup. Yeah. What you will notice over time that's your primary responsibility. Get clear on your values, discern sacred curiosity from hijacked curiosity, fill up your cup of passion. Amrit, what about purpose? I know, but hear me out. Just stick to filling that cup of passion up. What's going to happen? You do that for like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. After a certain amount of time, you find this with everybody. It's like, oh, check out this thing I've been reading, or check out this thing that happened to me. Like, I was there. Meditation helped me so much. It helped me like move through depression. And I'm like, hey, you stubbed your toe. Have you tried meditating on it? It's like, you can't help but share the thing that you love so much, right? And eventually someone will be like, I'd love to know more about that, right? So I was just doing the podcast, and that was cultivating all these things I was interested in. I was filling up the cup. And then eventually what happened is one of my audience members was like, will you coach me? And I was like, on what? And they're like, on everything you've been discussing. And I'm like, but I'm not a coach. And they're like, I think you could make a great coach for me. And I was like, I mean, I'm open to trying. Now I went away and got certified after all that. But nonetheless, I was like, I'm open to trying, you know? And so I just started to serve the things that were my passion to others. And that became my purpose. And that literally is the formula for purpose. Your passions are for you. Your purpose is for others. Yeah. And the key thing you have to do is serve. So what got us from curiosity to passion was cultivate. And what got us from passion to purpose is to serve. Now, don't rush serve. And that's what I said before. I'm curious about one curiosity point, which is coffee. And I want to serve it to the world. But it's like you bypass this entire process, right? Which was to refine your offering, to really embed it into your being, to make it who you are, to understand whether this really is to, maybe you started with coffee. Maybe it became about plants. Maybe it's about agricultural farming. Maybe it's about biodynamic farming. Maybe that's where you were meant to go with it all. And you've just gone away and now you're filling paper cups into the rest of the world's bins and you're like, what the fuck? And it doesn't line up to your values because you didn't take the time to cultivate it into your cup of passion and understand it inside out and really just build it for you. Most people in like today's fast fashion world won't, that's the hardest part. It's like, it's taking too long. It's like, it doesn't take that long. It took me like 4 months of podcasting to find out I was a coach. 3 months into coaching, my first coaching clients got me speaking engagements. A year later, I was a podcaster, coach, and speaker. Like, it took a year. Like, I know that sounds huge. When you look back at like the years of existence you've lived, what an amazing year. Touch wood.
Just beautiful. I mean, can you imagine a world where everyone is filling up their cup?
That's the dream.
On purpose and fulfilling their passions. So many of the world's problems would just disappear overnight. Thank you so much.
I truly believe so. I sincerely hope so. Yeah, sorry, you're singing my song.
And your enthusiasm, your passion, your energy just comes through so beautifully. And thank you so much for your time today. I really want to finish off just by reiterating, how can people connect with you? How can people work with you?
Oh, Catherine, thank you so much for your podcast, the space that you're holding. As a fellow podcaster, I know just how much cultivation of love and our curiosities go into it, and some days it's easier and some days it's not. And I just, I really, really respect and love the work that you're doing in the world. So just thank you so much for the opportunity of being here. And for those that want to continue, the journey potentially with my humble old self, I'm flattered. You can definitely discover your values. That's probably the best place to start. Amrit.coach/values. If you can take anything away, my advice is please go get your values. But if you are into podcasts and love podcasts, obviously the Inspired Evolution podcast exists. I'm affectionately saying that YouTube is the home of the podcast. It's where most of the comments are coming and I'm replying. And so I spend a lot of time actively on that platform. We are everywhere, Spotify, iTunes, and all that sort of stuff. So if that's your jam, by all means, tune into the Inspired Evolution there. But YouTube is the home of the podcast, and I humbly invite you over to the channel to check out what's going on there. If you're potentially open to Amrit's sparking something with me, I think I want to work with him one-on-one. It's amrit.coach/life. And you'll be able to book in a quick little call with me to sort of see where you're at on your journey and if I may be of any service. Those are the places. So amrit.coach is the website, as you've probably determined, /life. If you want life coaching, /values to get super clear on your values for free. I highly recommend you start there. And if you're into podcasts, then Inspired Evolution on YouTube. Thank you so much, Catherine. Really such a gift to share here today. I loved your questions.
Thank you so much for everyone listening. I know this is going to make a huge shift to clarifying exactly where you're at, exactly when you're being hijacked off into other decisions, which is so, so important for all of us, happens to us all. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.